Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football Podcast, the place where we don't sugarcoat anything, we don't hide behind statistics, and we absolutely do not sit on the fence. I'm your host Mark Goldbridge, and if you are new here, first of all, where have you been? Subscribe right now, hit that notification bell, because on this channel we talk football the way it should be talked about, passionately, honestly, and without any fear. And today we have got a cracker for you, because the World Cup 2026 is officially, completely, and utterly out of control. And I don't mean that in a good way. I mean chaotic. I mean disorganized. I mean the whole tournament is raising serious questions that nobody in power wants to answer. And to debate this with me today, I've got a man who never holds back. A man who will tell you exactly what he thinks, whether you like it or not. Former Crystal Palace chairman, TalkSport legend, Simon Jordan is in the building. Simon, welcome to That's Football Podcast, mate.
Mark, thank you. Good to be here. And I'll say this. When you say the World Cup is out of control, I think that's actually being generous, because from where I'm sitting, this tournament has exposed problems that FIFA has been hiding for years. So yes, let's get into it.
Right, Simon, let's start with the most obvious thing. 48 teams. FIFA expanded this World Cup to 48 nations. Is that the root of all the chaos we're seeing?
Absolutely. And let me be very clear about this. The expansion to 48 teams was never about football. It was never about the quality of the tournament. It was about money. It was about FIFA selling more broadcast rights, more sponsorship packages, more hospitality packages. That's it. Full stop. When you go from 32 to 48 teams, you are diluting the product. You are putting teams on that pitch who have no business being at a World Cup at this level. And what happens? You get mismatches. You get boring group stage games. You get fans traveling thousands of miles across America, Canada, and Mexico to watch a 1-0 game between two teams who frankly shouldn't be there. The football suffers, the spectacle suffers, and ultimately, the fans suffer. FIFA doesn't care about that. FIFA cares about the check.
Strong words, and I agree with you on the money side, Simon, but let me push back slightly. Some people are saying the logistics are the bigger problem. We're talking about games being played across 3 countries, USA, Canada, Mexico. The travel alone is a nightmare. Players, fans, media, everyone is exhausted. Is the 3-country hosting format the real disaster here?
It's a disaster on top of a disaster, Mark. Look, when you host a World Cup across 3 countries and multiple time zones, you are creating logistical chaos that nobody has ever had to deal with before at this scale. Think about it from a player's perspective. These are elite athletes. Their sleep patterns, their recovery, their preparation, all of it is disrupted when you're moving between cities that are sometimes 4 or 5 hours apart by flight. And we're not talking about one trip. We're talking about potentially 4, 5, 6 trips throughout the tournament for teams that go deep. And then for the fans, ordinary working people who have saved up their money, bought their tickets, booked their hotels, the cost of following their team across 3 countries is astronomical. I've heard stories of fans spending £15,000, £20,000 just to attend a handful of games. That is not a football tournament anymore. That is a luxury product that only the wealthy can fully experience. And that is a fundamental problem with what this World Cup has become.
Simon, let me bring in something that's been really controversial. And I think a lot of our viewers on That's Football Podcast will have strong opinions on this. The refereeing at this World Cup, VAR decisions, controversial calls. It feels like every single day there is a new incident that has half the football world going absolutely mad. Is the officiating at this tournament good enough?
No, it is not good enough. And I'll go further. It's been embarrassing at times. Now, I want to be fair to referees because I think refereeing is the hardest job in football and nobody gives them enough credit when they get things right. But VAR, the system that was supposed to solve these problems, the system that was supposed to give us clarity and justice, has somehow managed to make everything worse. Because now you don't just have a bad decision in real time. Now you have a bad decision that someone sat in a booth, watched 17 times on a screen and still got wrong. Or worse, they overturn a perfectly good decision and create controversy where there was none. The VAR interventions at this World Cup have been inconsistent, they've been slow, and they've undermined the flow of the game significantly. You're watching a tournament where players don't know how to celebrate anymore because everyone's waiting to see if some screen somewhere is going to take the goal away. That is not the football I grew up loving.
And that links into my next question perfectly, Simon, because one of the biggest talking points at this World Cup is how the big nations are performing, or in some cases, not performing. We've seen some big upsets, some big surprises. Is this World Cup proving that the gap between top nations and smaller nations is closing, or is it just tournament chaos?
Both. And I think it's important to separate those two things. Is the gap closing? Yes, genuinely. Football development globally has improved enormously over the last 20 years. Coaching education, sports science, tactical awareness, these things are reaching countries that 20 years ago had very little infrastructure. So there are genuine upsets happening because smaller nations are genuinely getting better. That is a positive story and we should celebrate it. But, and this is important, some of what we're seeing is also the chaos of an oversized tournament where form, momentum and confidence become unpredictable when you're playing so many games in such compressed schedules across such vast distances. Top players arriving to a World Cup slightly fatigued after a long club season and then being asked to perform in venues with extreme heat, humidity or altitude, that creates upsets that aren't really about footballing quality, they're about the conditions of the tournament itself. So when people say, isn't it brilliant that the small teams are winning? Sometimes yes, and sometimes it's not brilliance. It's exhaustion and chaos, and we need to be honest about which is which.
Simon, I want to talk about England specifically because on That's Football podcast, we obviously talk a lot about the English game. How have England performed at this World Cup? And what does it say about where English football is right now?
England, as they so often do, have given their supporters a complicated emotional journey. And look, I think there is genuine talent in that squad. Nobody can look at the players England have produced recently and say that English football is in poor health at the development level. The talent is there. The question, as it always is with England, is whether the system, the mentality and the management can harness that talent at the decisive moments of a major tournament. And historically, the answer has been no. Whether that changes at this World Cup, I'll reserve full judgment because, as we're discussing, the tournament itself is creating conditions that make fair assessment difficult. What I will say is this. English football needs to stop measuring success purely by World Cup performance. The Premier League is the best club competition in the world. The development pathways are improving, the coaching standards are rising. But international football is a different beast, and England's relationship with tournament pressure is still, in my view, the central unresolved issue for the national team.
Last question, Simon, and this is the big one. After everything we've seen at this World Cup 2026, the chaos, the logistics, the controversy, the VAR disasters. If FIFA came to you tomorrow and said, Simon Jordan, design us the perfect World Cup, what does it look like?
Right, here it is. Simple. 32 teams, one host nation, or at most, one neighbouring pair of nations where geography makes genuine sense. A concentrated tournament where fans can actually follow their team without needing a second mortgage. Where players can manage their workload across a reasonable schedule. Where every single game in the group stage actually matters because there's no room for error. You go back to the format that gave us Italia 90, France 98, Germany 2006, iconic tournaments that people still talk about decades later. You know why they still talk about them? Because the football was memorable, because the moments were concentrated, because you weren't diluting the product across 104 games and 3 time zones. FIFA will never do this because FIFA is a money-making machine first and a football organisation second. But if you ask me what the perfect World Cup looks like, it looks like the one we had before greed took over. And that, Mark, is the uncomfortable truth that everyone in football governance knows, but nobody wants to say out loud.
Simon Jordan, brilliant as always. Honest, direct, and saying things that need to be said. Genuinely loved having you on That's Football podcast today, mate. And look, everybody watching, everybody listening, this is why we do this show. because football deserves honest conversation, not PR speak, not corporate nonsense. Real opinions, real debate, real passion. If you enjoyed today's episode, and I think you did, please subscribe to That's Football podcast right now. Hit the like button, share this video with every football fan you know.